I was halfway through my workday when my phone rang, the sharp vibration breaking my focus. I glanced at the screen. An unknown number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something about it made me hesitate. With a quiet sigh, I picked up. "Hello, is this Daniel Carter?" A calm, professional voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "Sir, I'm calling regarding your outstanding balance of $38,000 for the wedding services booked under your name." For a moment, I thought I misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" I said, sitting up straighter in my chair. My heart began to pound. There must be some mistake. I didn't book any wedding. There was a brief pause on the other end, followed by the faint sound of typing. "According to our records, the contract was signed under your name 2 months ago. Full-service wedding package. Venue, catering, decoration, everything." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible," I said firmly, though my voice had started to shake. "I never signed anything like that. Can you send me the details?" "Of course, sir. I'll email you the contract immediately." The call ended, but I remained frozen, staring blankly at my desk. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Wedding? $38,000? My name? Within seconds, the email notification appeared. My hands felt cold as I opened it. There it was. A full contract, luxury venue, designer arrangements, high-end catering, all totaling $38,000. And, at the bottom, my name. My signature. Except it wasn't mine. I leaned back slowly, my chest tightening as realization crept in. Someone hadn't just made a mistake. Someone had used my identity. But who? Then, like a lightning strike, a thought hit me. My sister's wedding, 2 months ago. My parents had handled everything. A sinking feeling settled deep in my gut as the pieces started falling into place. No, they wouldn't. Would they? I grabbed my keys, my hands trembling now, not from confusion, but from something far worse. Betrayal. I needed answers. And I knew exactly where to get them. By the time I reached my parents' house, my mind was racing and my grip on the steering wheel had turned my knuckles white. I didn't even remember the drive. All I could think about was that contract and the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. I didn't bother knocking. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My mother was in the living room, casually watching TV like it was any normal evening. "Oh, Daniel, you're here. What did you do?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Without another word, I pulled out my phone and opened the contract, then thrust it toward her. "This. $38,000. A wedding contract under my name." Her face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. That flicker of panic. I don't understand," she said, but her voice wasn't as steady anymore. "Stop lying," I snapped. My father walked in from the hallway, frowning. "What's going on?" I turned to him. "You tell me. Why is my name on a wedding bill I never agreed to?" He looked at the phone, then at my mother. The silence between them said everything. My chest tightened. "You forged my signature?" Still, no answer. "Say something," I demanded. Finally, my father sighed heavily, rubbing his temples like I was the problem. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. I stared at him in disbelief. "Not a big deal? You committed fraud." "We were going to handle it," my mother quickly added. "It was just temporary. Your sister's wedding was important, and we knew you wouldn't say no." "You didn't even ask me," I said, my voice dropping into something colder. "You just decided to use me." "It's family," my father said firmly. "You're her brother. This is what family does." I let out a hollow laugh. "No," I said quietly. "Family doesn't steal from you." For the first time, the room felt unfamiliar, like I was standing in a stranger's house. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was betrayal. 3OK Part 3. The Golden Child, 350 words. I left the house that night, without saying another word. There was nothing left to say. My parents had made their choice, and now I had to face what that really meant. As I drove home, memories started surfacing. one after another, like pieces of a puzzle I had ignored for years. Emily had always been the center of everything. Growing up, she got the bigger room, the better gifts, the endless praise. If she made a mistake, it was not her fault. If I made one, it was a lecture about responsibility. Back then, I told myself it was normal, that every family had a favorite. But this was something else. This was them crossing a line I never thought they would. The next morning, I found myself scrolling through photos of her wedding. Perfect lighting, perfect decorations, perfect smiles. It looked like something out of a magazine, luxury venue, crystal chandeliers, a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I remembered how everyone had been talking about how magical it was. Now I knew the truth. It wasn't magical. It was built on a lie. On me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just because. By the time I reached my parents' house, my mind was racing and my grip on the steering wheel had turned my knuckles white. I didn't even remember the drive. All I could think about was that contract and the signature that looked like mine but wasn't. I didn't bother knocking. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. My mother was in the living room, casually watching TV like it was any normal evening. "Oh, Daniel, you're here. What did you do?" I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. She blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Without another word, I pulled out my phone and opened the contract, then thrust it toward her. "This. $38,000. A wedding contract under my name." Her face changed. Just for a second, but I saw it. That flicker of panic. I don't understand," she said, but her voice wasn't as steady anymore. "Stop lying," I snapped. My father walked in from the hallway, frowning. "What's going on?" I turned to him. "You tell me. Why is my name on a wedding bill I never agreed to?" He looked at the phone, then at my mother. The silence between them said everything. My chest tightened. "You forged my signature?" Still, no answer. "Say something," I demanded. Finally, my father sighed heavily, rubbing his temples like I was the problem. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. I stared at him in disbelief. "Not a big deal? You committed fraud." "We were going to handle it," my mother quickly added. "It was just temporary. Your sister's wedding was important, and we knew you wouldn't say no." "You didn't even ask me," I said, my voice dropping into something colder. "You just decided to use me." "It's family," my father said firmly. "You're her brother. This is what family does." I let out a hollow laugh. "No," I said quietly. "Family doesn't steal from you." For the first time, the room felt unfamiliar, like I was standing in a stranger's house. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was betrayal. 3OK Part 3. The Golden Child, 350 words. I left the house that night, without saying another word. There was nothing left to say. My parents had made their choice, and now I had to face what that really meant. As I drove home, memories started surfacing, one after another, like pieces of a puzzle I had ignored for years. Emily had always been the center of everything. Growing up, she got the bigger room, the better gifts, the endless praise. If she made a mistake, it was not her fault. If I made one, it was a lecture about responsibility. Back then, I told myself it was normal, that every family had a favorite. But this was something else. This was them crossing a line I never thought they would. The next morning, I found myself scrolling through photos of her wedding. Perfect lighting, perfect decorations, perfect smiles. It looked like something out of a magazine, luxury venue, crystal chandeliers, a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. I remembered how everyone had been talking about how magical it was. Now I knew the truth. It wasn't magical. It was built on a lie. On me. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just because. The silence on the phone stretched just a little too long. "About the wedding?" Emily finally said, her tone shifting, still casual, but now cautious. "What about it?" I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "There's a $38,000 bill in my name, Emily. A contract with my signature on it." Another pause. This one wasn't confusion. It was calculation. Oh, she said softly, like I had just reminded her of something minor. That. My grip tightened around the phone. That's all you have to say. Relax, she replied, letting out a small laugh. Mom told me you'd find out eventually. My chest felt like it had been hit with something heavy. So you knew. Of course I knew, she said, almost defensively now. It was my wedding, Daniel. You think I didn't ask how it was being paid for? I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to process the ease in her voice, the complete lack of guilt. And you were okay with it? I asked quietly. It's not a big deal, she said quickly. You make good money. You're not struggling or anything. I let out a bitter laugh. So that makes it okay to commit fraud in my name? Oh my God, you're being so dramatic, she snapped. It's family. People help each other. You're my brother. No, I said firmly, my voice dropping into something colder. Helping means you ask. You don't lie. You don't forge someone's signature. She sighed loudly, clearly annoyed now. Look, the wedding is already done. Everyone loved it. Why are you making this into a problem? That was the moment something inside me cracked completely. This wasn't just about my parents anymore. This was all of them. You really don't get it, do you? I said. Get what? That you didn't just take money from me. I replied slowly. You took my trust. There was no response this time. Just silence. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen for a second before ending the call. For the first time in my life, I saw them clearly. Not as family, but as people who had no problem using me. And that realization changed everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop screen the only light in the room, replaying everything over and over again. My parents' excuses. Emily's careless tone. The contract with my forged signature. For a brief moment, I considered just paying it off. It would have been easier. No drama. No conflict. Just $38,000 gone, and life would go back to normal. But then I asked myself something simple. Why should I? Why should I clean up a mess I didn't create? Why should I protect people who didn't hesitate to betray me? That thought settled it. I wasn't going to fix this. I was going to expose it. The next morning I started making calls. Not to my family, but to someone who actually understood what had been done to me. A lawyer. His office was quiet, professional, and far removed from the chaos in my head. I handed him the printed contract, pointing to the signature. I didn't sign this, I said. He studied it carefully, then looked up at me. Are you certain? Absolutely. He leaned back in his chair, his expression turning serious. Then this is a clear case of forgery. Possibly fraud and identity theft as well. Hearing those words out loud made everything feel more real, more final. What can I do? I asked. You have options, he replied calmly. We can dispute the contract, notify the company, and, if necessary, take legal action against the responsible parties. Responsible parties. My own family. For a second, there was hesitation. A small voice in my head telling me this would destroy everything. But then I remembered Emily's words. It's not a big deal. I looked the lawyer straight in the eye. Do it, I said. He nodded, already reaching for his notes. We'll start with legal notices. As I walked out of his office, something felt different. The anger was still there, but now it had direction. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about making sure they understood one thing. I wasn't someone they could use and walk away from. Not anymore. Things moved faster than I expected. Within days, my lawyer had everything prepared. Formal notices, documentation, and a clear statement disputing the contract. Every detail was precise, leaving no room for confusion. This will get their attention, he told me as he handed over copies. He wasn't wrong. The first notice went to the wedding company, informing them that the contract under my name was fraudulent and legally invalid. The second went to my parents. The third to Emily. For the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. 2 days later, my phone started ringing. I ignored the first few calls. Then the messages came. Mom. Daniel, what is this? Why did we receive a legal notice? Dad. Call me immediately. Emily, are you serious right now? What are you doing? I stared at the screen, feeling nothing but a cold calm. They were finally realizing this wasn't something they could brush off. That same afternoon, I received a call from the wedding company. Mr. Carter, the representative said, her tone much more careful this time, we've received your legal notice. Are you claiming the signature is forged? Yes, I replied firmly. I never signed that contract. There was a pause. In that case, we will need to open an internal investigation. Do that, I said, because I'm not paying for something I didn't agree to. By evening, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there, tense and angry. What have you done? He demanded. What you should have expected. I replied calmly. You're taking legal action against your own family? He snapped. You used my identity, I said. What did you think I would do? His expression shifted, frustration mixing with something else. Worry. This is going too far. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. This is exactly as far as it needs to go. For the first time, he didn't have a response. And in that moment, I realized something important. The control they always had over me, it was gone. The pressure didn't take long to build. Within a week, everything started unraveling for them. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls, messages, even voice notes filled with panic, anger, and desperation. This time, I didn't rush to respond. I let them sit in the same uncertainty they had thrown me into. Finally, I answered one of my mother's calls. Daniel, please, she said the moment I picked up, her voice shaky. Why are you doing this to us? I leaned back in my chair, calm but firm. Doing what? Telling the truth. You've sent legal notices, she cried. The company is asking questions. They're saying the contract might be void. Do you understand what this means? Yes, I said quietly. It means they'll have to find out who actually signed it. There was silence for a second. Then my father's voice came on the line, sharper and louder. You're destroying this family over money? I let out a slow breath. No. You destroyed it when you forged my name. That's not fair, he snapped. We did what we had to do for your sister. And you thought using me without my consent was okay? I shot back. You didn't even give me a choice. It's family, my mother said again, almost pleading now. We expected you to understand. I understand perfectly, I replied, my tone steady. You didn't trust me enough to ask. You just assumed you could take. That hit a nerve. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my father said, more quietly this time, You've gone too far with this legal nonsense. I shook my head, even though he couldn't see me. No. I've finally gone far enough. The call ended shortly after that, but the tension didn't. Later that night, messages from extended family started coming in. Questions, confusion, subtle accusations. Word was spreading. Their perfect image, the one they had carefully built over years, was starting to crack. And for the first time, they couldn't control the story. Because this time, I wasn't staying silent. It didn't take long for everything to start falling apart. The wedding company moved quickly after opening their investigation. They requested identity verification, signature analysis, and direct confirmation from all parties involved. What once seemed like a simple transaction was now a legal problem, and my parents were right at the center of it. Then came the payment demands. Without a valid contract under my name, the responsibility shifted back to the actual organizers of the wedding. My parents. And they weren't ready for it. I heard about it through a frantic call from Emily. Daniel, you need to fix this, she said the moment I answered, her voice shaking. Gone was the confidence, the arrogance, replaced by panic. They're saying the contract is invalid. They're asking us to pay everything immediately. I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang. Fix it, I repeated calmly. How exactly do you expect me to do that? I don't know, she snapped. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding or something. You're the one who started all this. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. I didn't start anything, I said. I just refused to take responsibility for something I didn't do. Daniel, please, she said, her tone softening now. This is serious. Mom and Dad can't afford this. They're freaking out. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For a second, I thought about all the times I had been expected to just handle things. To be the responsible one. The one who cleaned up after everyone else. Not this time. Maybe they should have thought about that before forging my name, I replied. There was silence on the other end. Heavy. Defeated. You're really not going to help? She asked quietly. I took a slow breath. No, I said. I'm not. The call ended soon after, but the impact of that moment stayed with me. For the first time, they were facing the full weight of their actions. No excuses. No backup plan. No one to shift the blame onto. Everything they had built their perfect moment on was collapsing. And this time, they couldn't escape it. By the end of the month, the situation had spiraled beyond anything they could control. The wedding company finalized their findings. The signature on the contract didn't match mine. The documents were flagged as fraudulent. And just like that, the responsibility shifted completely onto the people who had actually arranged everything. My parents. The same people who once acted so confident now had no choice but to face reality. Bills started piling up. Urgent notices. Payment deadlines. Legal warnings. They tried everything. First, they attempted to negotiate with the vendors, asking for more time, discounts, anything to reduce the damage. But luxury services don't come cheap, and they certainly don't forgive easily. Then came the loans. I heard through relatives that my father had taken out multiple loans just to cover part of the cost. My mother had started selling her jewelry, the same pieces she once proudly showed off at family gatherings. And Emily, her perfect wedding, had turned into a quiet embarrassment. People started asking questions. How is such an expensive wedding paid for? Why are there rumors about unpaid bills? Is everything okay? At first, they tried to keep it together. Smiles, excuses, vague answers. But rumors have a way of spreading. Soon, the truth began to surface. Not all at once, but enough. Enough for people to start connecting the dots. Enough for their carefully built image to crack. I started receiving messages from extended family, not angry this time, but curious. Some even apologetic. We didn't know the full story. I can't believe they did that to you. I didn't respond to most of them, because none of it changed anything. One evening, my father called again. This time, his voice wasn't angry. It was tired. We're handling it, he said quietly. You've made your point. I paused for a moment before replying. This was never about making a point, I said. This was about setting a boundary. There was no argument this time. No shouting. Just silence. Because deep down they knew. This wasn't something they could talk their way out of anymore. They were finally living with the consequences of their own choices. And for once, I wasn't there to save them. Months passed, and life slowly settled back into a rhythm of my own making. I had my apartment, my work, my routines, quiet, controlled, and free from the chaos my parents had created. The legal battles had ended. The fraudulent contract was officially nullified, and the wedding vendors had been paid by those who were actually responsible. Justice, in a way, had been served, but the real victory wasn't legal. It was personal. My parents tried to reach out, apologies, excuses, even attempts at reconciliation, but I kept my distance. Each call, each message reminded me of the betrayal that had once seemed unimaginable. The lines they crossed could never be erased. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild itself overnight. Emily sent one last text months later. I'm sorry. We didn't think it would get this far. I stared at it, feeling nothing. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. They had taken my name, my identity, and tried to manipulate me into paying for their mistakes. They had assumed I would stay silent, that I would forgive without consequence. I didn't. For the first time, I realized something crucial. Family isn't just blood and shared memories. Family isn't entitlement or expectation. Family isn't permission to abuse someone's trust. True connection is built on respect, honesty, and boundaries. I had set mine, and I had acted when they were crossed. Standing on my balcony one evening, watching the city lights shimmer below, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. I had faced betrayal, anger, and injustice, but I had survived it all on my own terms. They used my name. They thought they could manipulate me. But in the end, I made them remember who I really was. Not their obedient son, not the golden child's backup, not a silent victim. I was someone they could no longer control. And that was the lesson I carried forward. Respect isn't given automatically, trust isn't owed blindly, and every action has a consequence. I had lost nothing but illusions, and gained everything else. I was free.